Ave Maris Stella.
Hello and welcome back to Vatican II in a Year. This is your host, Father Matthew Schneider. I am a priest of the Legionaries of Christ and I teach theology. This is a podcast on the StarQuest Production Network at sqpn.com. Today we're on day 331 and we're covering Gaudium et Spes 50, and the topic is marriage is for children. Or marriage is for kids, as it was stated in the reading plan. I think of kids and children as synonyms. If you want to follow along, we have a reading plan and more details at sqpn.com/Vatican and frmatthewlc.com/Vatican. Yesterday, we had a meditation on human marital love perfected by grace. Today, we continue with Chapter 1, Fostering the Nobility of Marriage in the Family. And the topic today is marriage is ordered to children and spouses have a duty to their kids. Paragraph 50 has 3 subparagraphs. B is by far the largest. I think it's probably more than half of the paragraph. And we're going to read each individually. A talks about how marriage is ordered to children. 50B talks about how spouses have a mission to transmit life to children. And C reminds us that marriage is not just for kids, but other aspects like union in marriage help children as well. So, let's begin with 50A. Marriage and conjugal love are, by their nature, ordered towards the begetting and education of children. Children are really the supreme gift of marriage and contribute very substantially to the welfare of their parents. The God himself who said, "It is not good for man to be alone," Genesis 2, and who made man from the beginning male and female, Matthew 19, wishing to share with man a certain special participation in his own creative work, blessed male and female, saying, "Increase and multiply," Genesis 1. Hence, while not making the other purpose of matrimony of less account, the true practice of conjugal love and the whole meaning of the family life, which results from it, have this aim: that the couple be ready with stout hearts to cooperate with the love of the Creator and the Savior, who through them will enlarge and enrich his family day by day. This paragraph, as we note here, is this really almost a meditation on the love parents have for their children and how that love comes from God and comes from everything else. Some of these paragraphs are really texts for married couples to meditate on. I think yesterday and today really apply to this situation, where you can read them and pray over them as a married couple, or if you're married on your own, whether your spouse wants to or not, and things like that. Now, here we talk about how marriage is ordered to conjugal love, which if drawn to completion produces children. That is the nature of the conjugal act, right? If a man and a woman have sexual relations regularly over the course of time, they will likely have a child. For example, they usually think of infertility as if you don't have a child after regular sexual intercourse for a whole year. That's usually the border for infertility, where you might want to start looking at it. And that's just the nature of that kind of act. Now, obviously, not every single sexual act is going to result in a child, but that is where we start. We start with that idea of the possibility of them resulting in children, and this is really important to understand the aspect of marriage, because what is unique to marriage? The conjugal act. And this is where we look at natural law, because natural law is our participation as a rational creature in the divine law of God. So, this is natural law in how God made us as human beings. And when we look at these children, we have to see them as a gift. They are a gift coming forth. They are not a burden. Too often in our society, children are just seen as a burden. If you want to see some of the worst things online that aren't pornographic or, absolute Nazi level hatred stuff, you can go to places like Child Free on Reddit. And these are people who see children as absolutely despicable, children as like the worst thing. And it's not just people who choose not to have children for various reasons themselves. It's people who really dislike children and see them as bad for society. There's all kinds of issues with that, but I think that's the example, the extreme example of the other view in society. We, on the other hand, view children as this great gift. God made man male and female, and this is a complementarity. It means that they should cooperate, not that they should be in opposition. Too often, we have things where male and female are put in opposition. Too often, like little game shows or things like that, it's like men versus women or things. And that's a challenge. That's a difficulty. Whereas in marriage especially, they should be together. And here it talks about how through that love, through those relationships, the family of the church, Jesus' family, can be enlarged and enriched every day by couples living faithful marital love. Now we move on to 50b, the longest part. The topic is spouses have a mission to transmit life to children. Let's read it. B. Parents should regard as their proper mission the task of transmitting human life and educating those to whom it has been transmitted. They should realize that they are thereby cooperators with the love of God the Creator and are, so to speak, the interpreters of that love. Thus, they will fulfill their task with human and Christian responsibility, and with docile reverence towards God, will make decisions by common counsel and effort. Let them thoughtfully take into account both their own welfare and that of their children, those already born, and those which the future may bring. For this accounting, they need to reckon with both the material and the spiritual conditions of the times as well as their state in life. Finally, they should consult the interests of the family group, of temporal society, and of the church itself. The parents themselves and no one else should ultimately make this judgment in the sight of God. But in their manner of acting, spouses should be aware that they cannot proceed arbitrarily, but must always be governed according to the conscience dutifully conformed to the divine law itself, and should be submissive towards the church's teaching office, which authentically interprets that law in the light of the gospel. That divine law reveals and protects the integral meaning of conjugal love and impels it towards a truly human fulfillment. Thus, trusting in divine providence and refining the spirit of sacrifice, married Christians glorify the Creator and strive toward fulfillment in Christ, when with a generous human and Christian sense of responsibility, they acquit themselves of the duty to procreate. Among the couples who have filled their God-given task in this way, those who merit special mention, who with a gallant heart and with a wise and common deliberation, undertake to bring up suitably even a relatively large family. I think what we started here is that parents have this mission is a way to summarize this subparagraph. Part of the mission of a married couple is transmitting that life to the children. And in so doing, they cooperate with God's creating action. It is God who creates the soul. Man and woman make the body that is disposed to that soul through natural means. That creation by God of the soul is what distinguishes human sexual intercourse and procreation from the reproduction of other mammals, because the biological process, in most mammals is relatively similar. And that's important. And parents have the right to decide how many children they want. It's not one spouse against the other, and it's not the church or society that can tell them. They should take into account all kinds of things like society, like their own finances, like the possibility of what will be future kids versus existing kids and things like that. But ultimately, that decision is theirs. We can tell couples, oh, it would be great if you had another kid, but we can't tell them, you must have another kid. And in doing so, in making this decision, they should be docile to God. They should work within His laws, within His modes. For example, things like using IVF would be a problem here. IVF, in vitro fertilization, making babies in test tubes. And the church teaching helps us to clarify things like this. And this is all based on divine law. It is divine law that determines this, and then we participate, we understand it in natural law. Finally, this paragraph wants to encourage generosity. It mentions at the end the special blessing of large families. And it's wonderful to see in the church when you have a couple who has their, 3, 4, 5, 6 kids. It's wonderful. Now, moving on to our last subparagraph today. C is about marriage not just for kids, but these other aspects like union help kids or help children. Let's read it. 50C. Marriage, to be sure, is not instituted solely for procreation. Rather, its very nature is an unbreakable compact between persons and the welfare of the children. Both demand that mutual love of the spouse be embodied in a rightly ordered manner, that it grow and ripen. Therefore, marriage persists as a whole manner of communion of life and maintains its value and indissolubility, even when, despite the often intense desire of couples, offspring are lacking. So this is important that we start out here, that we talk it's not just procreation. Procreation, children, is one of the ends, but this union, which we mentioned, I forget exactly how many days, but we mentioned earlier in this chapter, that idea of union is positive, is another end of marriage. And that union, that communion of life of the couple, actually serves the good of their own children. Because we see when mom and dad love each other in those sense that it helps us to see a good example and live our lives in a proper way. And here we have this idea of union is serving those kids, yeah. And then finally, we need fidelity and unity even in difficulty. There is this communion of life. And one of the difficulties that's mentioned here, that's made explicit, is the challenge of couples who are infertile. The church here is beside them, wants to help them out, and notes that this is still a valid marriage, a good marriage, even if the couple is infertile. There has been a whole developed area of Catholic moral theology on what we do for infertility, what is moral and immoral. We can assist fertility, but we can't replace it. That's the simplified version. This isn't the place to go in depth of that. If we want to have maybe a bioethics thing, maybe ask a question at the end for the end of the year one, but that kind of idea is helpful to understand. So that concludes today. Thank you for listening to this episode of Vatican II in a Year. This is a listener-supported podcast, and you can donate to help StarQuest produce it and other great podcasts at sqpn.com/give. You can give one-time monthly or join the StarQuest Patreon. Tomorrow, we are going to continue with the next paragraph of Gaudium Spes. That will be paragraph 51 on the modern world can interfere with marriage. Please join us to learn more about Vatican II, which can provide a blueprint for the Catholic Church. If you want more information on the podcast, go to sqpn.com/Vatican, frmatthewlc.com/Vatican, or Vatican SQPN on Facebook and X. There you will find things like playlists for individual documents and a reading plan.